Hello everyone. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with where you are from and what time you are watching. Your support helps us bring you more stories like this. Now let us begin. It was Sunday, the 30th of June, 1822, in the town of Pontypool, county of Monmouthshire, Wales. Dawn broke pale over the stone buildings that clustered around the ironworks, and smoke from coal fires drifted low between the narrow streets. The smell of damp earth mixed with the faint scent of brewing ale. On the corner where the high street met the lane leading to the canal stood the Cross Keys, a public house known to travellers and local men alike. Inside, the rooms were still. No footsteps sounded on the stairs. No voices carried from the kitchen. Rachel Edwards was 26 years old, the wife of William Edwards, a stonemason and quarryman of modest means. She had been born Rachel Williams in 1796, raised in a family that valued modesty and service. Her mother had worked as a dressmaker, and Rachel herself had sometimes assisted with the sewing. She was known by those who spoke of her at all as a woman of quiet disposition. She kept to herself. She did not linger at neighbours' doors. But on that Sunday morning, as the church bells began to ring across Pontypool, Rachel Edwards stood in the kitchen of the Cross Keys and knew that her husband would not rise from his bed again. William Edwards had been born around 1790 in Pontypool, the son of a stonemason. He had learned the trade from his father, and by his early 20s had established a small quarry on a parcel of land where he combined masonry with modest farming. He married Rachel Williams in 1820. She had occasionally worked at his parents' home, and it was through this employment that the two became acquainted. After their marriage they kept a modest dwelling on the edge of town and employed a servant girl named Mary Morgan. The days followed a familiar routine. William went out to work. Rachel attended the home, prepared meals, visited the market. She did not gossip in the streets. Some described her as gentle, well-spoken, mild-mannered. But beneath this calm exterior lay something colder, more distant, quietly detached. In early 1822, the couple took over the Cross Keys public house in the heart of Pontypool. The inn was a bustling place, frequented by locals and travellers who gathered to exchange stories, share news, and spread gossip. William still operated his quarry during the day. Rachel worked in the public house, serving ale and managing the rooms. She was now in an environment where she saw men from all walks of life. It was remarked by some that she had begun to drink. Although they maintained an outward appearance of contentment, whispers circulated that the marriage was far from harmonious. It was said that Rachel had once threatened her husband with a knife, a rumour that suggested deeper troubles behind closed doors. They had begun sleeping in separate rooms, and it was becoming increasingly clear that their domestic life was marked by persistent tension. On Monday, the 24th of June, 1822, William and Rachel, accompanied by a woman named Mary Sandbrook, attended the fair at Abergavenny. It was a lively gathering, one of the largest in the region, drawing farmers and traders from across the countryside. When they returned in the early evening, William was quieter than usual. He complained of fatigue, his face drawn and pale. That night, he took to his bed, doubled over in pain. By morning, his condition had worsened. When the maid, Mary Morgan, went to his room, she found him sweating and complaining that he felt most unwell. She fetched the mistress, who immediately began to tend him. Rachel sent Mary out to purchase remedies from the shops along the high street. E-girl returned with powders and tinctures, which were mixed into tea and administered to the patient. Nothing improved. The following day, Tuesday the 25th, William remained in his bed. Mrs. Edwards prepared tea that was sweetened with milk, and she mixed in some powders while Mary stayed by her mistress's side. Mr. Edwards drank his tea, but his condition did not improve. By mid-morning, Rachel decided that he needed additional medication and sent Mary out again, this time for laudanum, smelling salts, and vinegar. The girl walked the streets, visited the chemist, returned with what had been requested. Still, nothing changed. On Wednesday morning, Rachel rose early and prepared breakfast for her husband. she told Mary to purchase 3 pennyworth of crowhigs from Mr. Ebenezer Joan shop. The term referred to the seeds of the strychnine tree, a substance known for its poisonous properties, commonly used to kill crows and other pests. Mary returned with the seeds, and Rachel sliced 2 of them into small pieces, which she added to a pot of tea, along with sugar and cream. She went upstairs with the tea and some bread and butter, which she gave to her husband. By now William no longer had the strength to rise. His groans could be heard throughout the house, low and strained sounds that came at intervals. By Thursday the 27th, the household had fallen quiet. Rachel remained by her husband's bedside. She did not say much, but acted the part of the concerned wife. However, somewhat strangely, she did not call for a doctor. Outside, life in Pontypool continued. The carts rolled along the high street. The market stalls opened. The bells of St. James' Church rang the hours. None were aware of what was unfolding behind the walls of the cross-keys. The following day, Friday the 28th, Mrs. Edwards rose early and found that her husband was no better. She asked Mary to burn certain items, linen, clothes, even the teacups from which William had drunk. Rachel gave no reason, only instructions. Quietly and without question, Mary obeyed. On Saturday the 29th, William's pain remained evident. Mrs. Edwards continued to attend him, but the door to his room stayed firmly closed. Mary noticed that her mistress was holding a key to the master's room. Normally the key was left in the door, but on this day it was removed. Mary had to go to the market and spent much of the day out of the house. When she returned in the evening, the house was silent. She did not see her master, nor was she permitted to enter his room. In the early hours of Sunday, the 30th of June, Mary was in the kitchen when her mistress descended the stairs and told her that Mr. Edwards had died. Rachel gave no explanation, only the simple statement, "Mary did not return to her bed." At first light, she was sent to fetch a woman named Betty Cadwallader. Rachel then made a peculiar request. She handed Mary a vessel and instructed her to carry it out to the canal just beyond the front of the house and wash it, along with a bucket. Mary said that she had never done such a thing before. The vessel contained a yellowish liquid, something that resembled vomit. She did, as she was told, walk to the canal in the pale morning light and washed both items in the cold water. Later that day, Mrs. Edwards sent Mary to the home of Anne Williams with a message. She was not to mention anything about going to Mr. Ebenezer Jones's shop to purchase arsenic. When Mary returned, she was instructed to wash out a small basin that had traces of milk. By now, word had spread of Pontypool that William Edwards had died. He had been regarded as a healthy man, known for his steady habits and unassuming nature. The suddenness of his death, and the circumstances surrounding it, raised immediate suspicion. The local doctor was called to examine the body. The cause of death was not immediately clear, but certain signs raised alarms, symptoms that did not quite align with an natural cause. His experience led him to wonder if this was no ordinary death, but the result of something far more sinister. A post-mortem examination was quickly arranged. The doctors opened the deceased man's stomach and confirmed that the cause of death was arsenic poisoning. The discovery prompted a coroner's inquest, which was convened within days. Medical testimony was presented. The examining physician stated that arsenic had been found in the stomach in a quantity sufficient to cause death. The substance had been identified through chemical analysis, and samples were sealed and retained for further examination. The symptoms observed during Mr. Edwards's final days, the vomiting, the abdominal pain, the progressive weakening, all corresponded with arsenic poisoning. There was no UBT as to the cause of death. The inquest also heard testimony from Anne Williams, the aunt of Mrs. Rachel Edwards. She recounted that approximately 1 week before Mr. Edwards had died, her niece had approached her with a request to purchase white arsenic, along with a few other substances. Miss Williams stated that Rachel had told her the arsenic was needed to deal with a problem of mice in the house. Though arsenic could lawfully be purchased for certain purposes, its deadly nature was well understood. Miss Williams detailed their conversation and suggested that although the request had seemed mundane at the time, she now believed it had been a carefully veiled pretext for something far more sinister. The maid, Miss Mary Morgan, also gave evidence. She told the coroner's jury certain CTS about the days leading up to Mr. Edwards's death, though it was later discovered that some of her statements were false. She had been instructed by her mistress to say that Mr. Edwards had dressed in his work clothes and gone out for the entire day on Wednesday, and that he had left the house on Friday morning and returned only late that night. Neither statement was true. She also failed to mention initially that she had seen her mistress slice crow higs into the teapot on Wednesday morning. The coroner's inquest concluded that the arsenic had been administered by Mrs. Rachel Edwards. She was formally charged with willful murder and committed to stand trial. The servant girl, Miss Mary Morgan, was also charged as an accomplice. If you are finding this case as compelling as we are, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. It truly helps us continue researching and sharing these forgotten stories from history. We also read every comment, so let us know your thoughts on this case below. Now let us continue. Rachel appeared completely unaware of the seriousness of her situation and showed no emotion when she and Mary were placed in a cart to be transported from Pontypool to the prison in Monmouth, accompanied by 2 constables. However, during the journey, she managed to supply the constables and the driver with alcohol. The men became so intoxicated that Rachel and Mary were able to escape. When news of this reached Pontypool, several local men set off to find them. Thanks to their quick action, both women were discovered asleep at Trelec Wood, approximately 4 miles from Monmouth. They were taken back into custody. A few days later, the charges against Mary Morgan were dropped. It would be Mrs. Rachel Edwards alone who would stand trial. The trial began at the court in Monmouth before Mr. Justice Bailey. Mrs. Edwards was charged with having administered arsenic to her husband in the town of Pontypool, which had resulted in his death. The indictment accused her of both murder and petty treason, a charge historically used when a wife killed her husband. In the dock, Mrs. Edwards appeared physically frail but showed no signs of emotion or fear. At the direction of the judge, she was provided with a chair to sit upon. Mr. Pearson represented the prosecution, Mr. Campbell represented the defendant. The first witness to take the stand was Anne Williams, the aunt of Mrs. Edwards. In a composed voice, she recounted that approximately 1 week before Mr. Edwards had died, her niece had approached her with the request to purchase white arsenic. Though arsenic could be purchased lawfully for pest control, its deadly nature was well understood. The testimony drew immediate attention in the courtroom. The most critical evidence came from 16-year-old Miss Mary Morgan, the maid who had worked in the home of Mr. and Mrs. Edwards. She told the court that the couple often argued and that they sometimes slept in separate beds and even separate bedrooms. She added that she had seen Mrs. Edwards threaten her husband with a knife. Miss Morgan also stated that on Wednesday morning she saw her mistress preparing breakfast for Mr. Edwards and witnessed her slice 2 crow higs into small pieces, which were added to a pot of tea along with sugar and cream. She said that Mrs. Edwards then went upstairs with the tea and some bread and butter, which she gave to her husband. However, under cross-examination by Mr. Campbell, Miss Morgan's testimony began to unravel. She admitted that she had told the coroner's jury falsehoods. The instruction of her mistress, including statements that Mr. Edwards had left the house on certain days when he had not. Her credibility was severely damaged by these admissions. The judge summed up the case and instructed the jury to focus solely on the evidence presented during the trial. He outlined 2 central questions. First, did Mr. William Edwards die as a result of having arsenic adduced to his stomach? Second, was the arsenic administered by the defendant? It was now 11 o'clock in the evening. The jury retired to consider their verdict. They deliberated for 2 hours before returning to the courtroom. Every eye turned towards them as they took their seats. Before the verdict was delivered, however, the defendant, Mrs. Rachel Edwards, was given the opportunity to speak. She said, "In this solemn hour I stand before you, weak and burdened with grief. I beseech you to consider my words carefully. I have loved my husband dearly, and I mourn his loss beyond measure. If I have done wrong, I ask for mercy from my Lord and from you all. I pray that justice be tempered with compassion. Be mindful that I am a woman, flawed perhaps, but not without remorse. My only wish is that my soul may be cleansed, and that the truth may bring peace to the living and the dead." Her words were spoken with humility and sorrow. Some in the courtroom were visibly moved, while others sat in silence, their expressions unreadable. The foreman of the jury then stood and announced the decision. They found the defendant, Mrs. Rachel Edwards, guilty of murder. Turning to Mrs. Edwards, Mr. J. Eustace Bailey stated that she had been found guilty of the most serious crime, and there could be but one punishment: death by hanging. Following the trial, she was taken to the prison in Monmouth, where she received spiritual guidance from the chaplain. At her request, 2 Welsh-speaking clergymen also visited, praying with her in what she called the language of the heart. Her final days were marked by deep remorse. On the Thursday before her execution, her 2 sisters visited to say goodbye. In their presence, Rachel made a written confession and farewell address that she asked to be shared with the public. In it, she acknowledged her guilt and urged others to learn from her mistakes. She implored families to live with love, fidelity, and devotion to God. On the day of her execution, Friday the 16th of August, 1822, a large and solemn crowd gathered outside the prison walls. The scaffold had been erected in the customary place. The morning was grey and a light rain had begun to fall. As she walked to the scaffold, she again confessed her crime and accepted her sentence as just. Her final address was read aloud. In it, she begged mothers to raise their children with knowledge and reverence of the Lord. She urged husbands and wives never to take for granted the sacred bond that united them. She warned against the destructive influence of bad company and urged the faithful practice of prayer, especially prayer as a family. The drop fell at 8 o'clock in the morning. Death was immediate. Afterwards, her body was delivered to the surgeon for dissection, as was customary in cases of murder. The newspapers reported the execution in brief. The Monmouth Beacon devoted 2 paragraphs to the event. The story faded quickly from public discourse. Within a year it was spoken of only rarely, and then only in whispers among those who remembered. The Cross Keys continued to operate as a public house for several decades there. After the rooms were let to travellers, ale was served. Life resumed its ordinary rhythms. The canal flowed past, its waters dark and slow. Years later the building was demolished to make way for new construction. No plaque was placed, no record remained. The file was sealed and stored in the archives at Monmouth, bound in dust and silence.